Okay, so we are back again, and now we have to work upon the shading sections of the fluids, of course, with respect to the opacity graph, to the drop-off shape, the lighting transparencies, and all. So let's just get begin with the transparency section. So these dusts are being quite a light version, so we are not required to have a lot of, uh, little value of the transparency. We need to give at least, let's say, 0.55. And just don't worry about that because we're still required to tweak the transparency, oh sorry, the opacity graph. So what I'm going to do first is that I would like to take the opacity graph to its appropriate, you know, uh, to the desired value. And you have to be very careful, if you're looking for a very crispy kind of the dust. So it's just not, required to maintain the graph in the way like that we do have to maintain for creating the puffy smokes and all. But again, it's an artistic decision. So if in case you want that kind of the dust, which is, softy kind of the dust, puffy kind of the dust, so in that case, you may could do that as well also. I mean, this section I would like to completely leave up to your decision. But I would like to follow this kind of a graph. So if somebody's interested in working in that way, so you may could work in this fashion also. And the most important thing that I like in the Maya flow is the bias thing. So input bias, basically, not the bias. If you're going to press point one, you can see that these fluids are being getting a little bit more thick. And if you go for minus 0.050, you could see that again now you started utilizing the crispy nature of the dust. But again, this one will gonna cost you because for that you're really gonna need to have very high resolutions. So coming back to 0.050, I think so would be a good start for you. And of course, we also required to work upon the transmit. Look at that. If we do not have, you're really gonna have a lot of big dust. So right now it's looking completely the flat. So the quick workaround is to utilize the lighting, and then again you can see that okay, there's a lot of problems in terms of the directionality of the light. So what you're gonna need to do is that let's say we put to -1 at least. I don't think so. We're gonna solve the job. Point one, maybe -1. No, point one again, and let's say -1. All right, that's quite good, promising. At least for our tutorial purpose, or at least for the visualizations, because one is required really to work upon the opacities and of course the lighting in order to give the most realistic look and feel of the dust and all. So again, put that thing to the one so that we could have some more better shading impacts. And then what we're going to do here is that to take the transparency, let's say we could take it to point 5 is quite a good. And let me just gonna give the color quickly. We like to have the dusty kind of the color over here, and again we'll put that into the density mode. The one here again we're gonna give this. The first one will be get a little bit more darker version, and then we can put the color input based upon the Z gradient. That's quite okay. So with that, I could get the look and feel of the dust, which is quite a good thing. Now what I'm gonna do, I can just hide these, under the display menu, the boundary draw to the bounding box, so that I could just, concentrate over here. And for those who just need a little refresh, in viewport 2.0, it's quite a nice to have the fluid, but you're also required to switch on the float point render, which is the floating point render target. Oops, I didn't switch it on, and so I just required to have that. So as you could see that the moment I just utilize it, it'll start giving me the very nice look and feel of the fluid. So just please uh, be careful to utilize this excellent option. And for the next, what we are required to do, you could just check the direction of the velocity. However, I do not recommend this because we are not giving a very highly realistic, or you can say the authentic kind of the fluid. It's just like, the blowing dust all across the street. So you're not even required to be too much, choicy regarding that. So these settings are quite a good. And if again one wishes to increase the solver quality, let me just kind of take it to 250. It's quite high. You're gonna see some kind of the crispiness inside the fluids. Again, it's a personal choice. If you wish to include the crispiness inside the fluids, you are all good to go with the high value of solver quality. But be careful that, of course, it will gonna eat up your computational steps of your computer and all. So just be careful in that aspect. If we're going to give it to 50, the simulation will really going to be the fast and quite puffy kind of all of that. So again, depends up to you. So just giving you with both the choices, the take a render, take the play blast, take many play blast as you could, do, and then you try to get yourself settled at which is the most best settings to utilize the fluids. Now we are good with the buoyancy, which is 10. Now, for the fast moving fluids, we recommend you to go with the simulation rate scale 1.5 instead of the 1. And of course, we are almost done. We are almost on the stage of completion. We are not required to give the ambient color this one. Again, we like to go with the, let's say, a lighter version of the dust. Oh, I think so. This was also working good. Okay, that is fine. Not a problem. The green one also gonna work. So we are almost done with the settings, and as you know that the way we would like to render the fluids, we are never forgotten to change the render interpolator to the smooth rather than to the linear. And I guess we are almost done with the process. So I may could extend the resolutions of the fluid to 150, and this may gonna take a little bit amount of the time to solve, but not an issue. It's still fast. And here you can see that such a nice and a crispy kind of the fluids have now started, pairing. And this is the thing that I was looking for. Now, how do we going to solve this particular problem? Well, this isn't a problem. This is again the nature of the fluids that are being getting advected. And you may could dip it down if you would like to work upon the, let us say, the drop off shape, which is it will going to, you could say, make the fluid transparent the moment those voxels cross the limits. So for example, I would like to give it to the minus z direction, and with that you may could see that the moment I started working upon the edge drop off, these issues are now being getting rectified. So no problem in that. Sometimes it do happens like the fluids change the way they move. Of course, I also want that these dust to be these dust are also required to move in a very fast way. So with that you may could, you know achieve such kind of effects as well. And if in case you would like to increase the, you know, I, I mean, I'm never going to recommend you this for our course, but if in any case you would like to create such kind of an effect where the transparency is quite dark or high, you may could, start working on them as well. But moving forward again back to our main concept, we are almost done with that, and you wish you may could increase the gradient force to 75, and you're also required to change the thrill again back to the 8. But in case I would like to use the lesser values of the thrill, because I just don't want a lot of thrill inside the dust. However, the dust, they do carry the thrill, but for this reaction I think these values are quite powerful and quite sufficient. Again, you are required to play with the transparency and the opacity. Things may could get much, much better when you're going to utilize the composing packages and all. And I think so, these values are quite promising and quite good as far as the dust is concerned. The last thing I would like to do is to reduce the transparency. again we'd like to take it back to zero point 0.5, and that's something which is excellent. So I hope so, guys, you are done with the process of creating the dust. And before I just wrap up, would like to take you to the settings of the cache so that you may could complete the cache. But before we complete the cache, you are required to take the fluids inside the main scene that we have created. And of course, you're going to create the group of this fluid container. You're going to scale them up, position them most, not accurately or authentically, but just you can say it should fulfill your expectations. Like, these things should have some buildings and all over here. So there is no requirement to be too much, accurate. And then you are required to make these fluids may collide with the one that we showed you with the proxy objects. And after that it is done, you are really very good to create the cache version of the fluids. All right, so I believe so this is done and you must have got the idea what I'm trying to say. Now let's just go to the next lesson where we'd like to show you the process of making the turbulence inside the wires, how to tweak the wires, the electric wires. Okay, so let's just start with that one.